Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. I am truly grateful for the time that you are spending with me. Today's episode is kind of inspired by an article that I was reading this morning about Nick Fuentes and how he is now turning against the Republican Party and hopes the Republican Party loses and hopes the MAGA movement loses. And then, of course, if you keep on reading, it talks about some of there's some things coming out about him that aren't good. And I leave it at that because I don't know whether they're true or not. I'm just going to leave it at that. But my purpose for bringing that up is not to talk about him, but to point out that not only do I regularly talk about how we are divided in this country, but now we are turning against each other. More and more people are turning against each other, whether it's in this case, Nick Fuentes is now turning on the Republican Party, or people stop liking the people that are bringing them the news, whatever the case may be. We are now turning on each other. Division is one thing. Division, we've always had division, but now that we're turning against each other, not that we should not be turning against somebody who does the wrong thing, says the wrong thing, or is doing something wrong. But in general, if you look around, everybody is suddenly turning against each other. So it's worse than division because now you're always looking over your shoulder for who's going to turn on you next. And it gave me a thought as I paused there for a second. It gave me a thought. We don't have to like each other to find the things that we can agree on. As a matter of fact, if we just use some kindness, not only can bring more people together on common ideas, we can bring people together on things that we don't agree on. There's power in kindness. I get it because I've got friends who just love how Trump spikes the ball. I know people who love, and look, I get it. That's his thing. That shows a strength. There's also power in strength, but you can be kind and strong. You can do things, you can do things in a strong way and still be kind, and vice versa. And I'm trying to accomplish bringing people together through kindness instead of constantly beating people over the head. It shows how we, can be not so much divided, be a little united on some common ideas, but not turn on each other. Because the minute we turn on each other, we've not only lost the ability to come together, but we've lost the ability to fight the powers that be that are benefiting from our division and are benefiting right now with everything that's going on. So what I did was today, I put together my memes reflecting these thoughts. I put together some memes today that are going to not only reflect the how people turn on each other, but how they turn on themselves, how they change, what's going on. Show all of the things that are happening, the hypocrisies and the about faces and the waffles and the flip flops that are making people not only turn on others, and in many cases, rightfully so, but how they are using some of their actions to justify it. And my reason for doing this is so you'll just scratch your head and go, hey, wait a second, because we are being played. And it's just an easy way for me to say, look, whether you like somebody, don't like somebody, turn on somebody to support them today, turn on them tomorrow, forget that. That's just the chess pieces. When you really truly start to look at what's going on out there, the news stories that show the hypocrisies and the flip-flops and the waffles should bring us all together, scratching our heads, realizing that the truth is not only being withheld from us, but they will manipulate the truth to coerce us to support them when they need us and turn on others when they need us to do that too. Today's show is brought to you by Patriot Mobile. Get a free month, get some discounts when you use my promo code WWFA at patriotmobile.com/WWFA. You will find not only competitive rates, but you will find great service because they use all the carrier lines, not just the one that you signed up for. My next meme, my first meme, I guess, of my show today is a quote from Patrick Carroll. I didn't look up who he is. I just like the quote. It gives me a lot of thoughts. So again, as we turn into my memes, I'm gonna remind people it's not always what the meme actually says that brings a lot of my thoughts into this to my show. It's sometimes the backhanded meaning or the behind the scenes meaning, if you will, of what things or what it makes me think. And that's why I'll share this with you. One of the greatest successes of statism is its ability to convince everyone that it's only the current guy in power who's the problem and not the system itself. And while that's easy to read on the outside, when you look at, I know I'll just use Trump as an example. The system was broken before Trump. And people can point out the things or turn on Trump for the things that they don't like about him, the things that he says, and maybe, oh, he said this and he went back on this campaign promise, whatever. The reason I don't go down that road and attack the president or sort of defend the president or anything is because, I mean, look at the overall direction. As I've always said, that's what I support. But when you look at the game that's going on around him, you start to figure out that it's not always about him. They'll make it about him because when you make it about somebody, you've got a fall guy, you got a whipping boy, you've got a target, you've got somebody who is going to be the fall guy because you make one person the evil person, as they said, the man behind the tree. You may, in this case, he's not behind a tree, of course, but you make somebody evil. You're not only able to divide people up in the process, you can turn people against them. And then that's how you cover up everything else that's wrong. And that's what's happening in government. Everybody always wants to blame the guy that's in the media at the time, or the guy that says a stupid thing at the time, or the guy that's easy for them to focus their hate on to make that person look hateful. In the meanwhile, you're distracted on that. You're not looking at the generations and years of problems that have caused us to get to the point where we are today. And that's what I liked about this. It says on who the guy is, who the guy in office is, and that's who the problem is. No, it's years of the system getting more and more corrupted, more and more bloated, more and more powerful and bigger. That's is the problem. It's not any one person in office today. We, the people, have become complacent and allowed it to get to where it is today. And that's only part of the problem. I'm not going to go there right now. The system has been in place for years, and the system is running more and more inefficiently as every new elected official gets in office. It's the 20 before them that have gotten us to where we are. It's not always the one that's in office. They're just ones taking the blame. I went too far on that one. Sorry. I know we get off to a slow start. Sometimes when I do my show, my podcast, and I get started, I kind of get passionate about something and I kind of go off in a direction, and then I got to swing myself back around. So I appreciate that sometimes that's kind of behind the scenes stuff. Sometimes when you hear me get started, you kind of hear me kind of getting warmed up, if you will. And then when I get rolling, you'll it's like, hang on, because once I start getting rolling, just hang on. And because I got lots of stuff coming out, especially when I do my memes like I'm doing in this episode. I know I've been doing a lot of these lately, but there's a lot of them coming out. They bring a lot of thoughts to my mind, and that's what I like to share. Of course, the theme that we started out with is how everybody is turning on each other, but some deserve it, some don't. And these are all the memes that kind of show what's going on that have caused that to happen. This next meme is a guy with his back to the camera. It's of course a cartoon, and he's looking at this at the Capitol building, and off to the right, it says there is a reason why 7 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the U.S. are in the Washington D.C. area, and it's not because they have a lot of entrepreneurs who have found ways to serve their fellow man. No, my friends, it's because the money's in Washington, D.C. And I know, like, oh, well, of course it is. That's where our federal government is. That's where the bureaucracy is. No, my friends, that's where the lobbyists are. That's where the NGOs are. Everybody has an office in D.C. because that's where the feeding trough is. The feeding troughs are. And that, my friends, is where they go to get their money, get fed, and stay in power. And they focus their efforts in DC because not only is the money coming from DC, but it's going through DC. And that, my friends, is where the money is. And that's why 7 out of 10 of the wealthiest counties are in the US or in DC. And again, a lot of people scratch, oh, well, that's all common sense. Well, guess what? The problem is common sense ain't too common anymore. And most of the people in the United States don't watch this. And my friends who listen to my show who don't know this, I'm not saying you don't have common sense, because you're listening to my show, which proves that you want more facts. You have the common sense to listen to my show, and I am grateful for that. So I try to use some common sense thoughts to feed the information and help you use simple things to open more eyes. That's what this is all about. It's not about me and it's hearing me talking my ideas. I am trying to get information out there in simple ways, oftentimes, to be able to help you with another arrow in your quiver, fight the battle, to inform people, to bring more people together and stop turning against each other, which only slows down our victory. All right, next up, we've got the next meme up is from Thomas Sowell. You know, he's my favorite. Economics and politics must both deal with a basic fact of life. What everybody wants adds up to more than what is possible. Economics deals with this by rationing through prices. Politics deals with it by lying and promising more than it can possibly deliver. As I dive deeper into this quote, like I've been telling you, free markets fix it. But government gets involved and they use narratives and ideologies to try to control the free markets, to not only perpetuate their narratives and beliefs and appease their electorate, to appease their voters, that is, because when you promise things through government, you got to make government borrow the money or tax people more. But we've gotten to a point where taxes aren't even doing it. It's the printing of the money and the funneling of the cash through the NGOs and the bureaucratic agencies that bloats government, creates a need for more people in Washington, D.C. who are siphoning off the money and feeding at the trough and buying up all those expensive properties. But the only way to do that is, and promising people, is borrow and spend. And you can still never fully give to people what they want, because bureaucracy controls not only who gets it. And either way, I'm not going to go down that road right now. Free markets solve it through economics. It's the beautiful part of capitalism. But the reason why Democrats and the left don't like the free markets and capitalism is because it takes power away from them and takes power away from the bureaucracies and our federal government. The free markets put economic power in the hands of people, and it also creates a higher success rate for the little guy. That's why politicians don't like it. That's why they promise you more through government and less, or try to regulate the free markets, like I said, because the power is in promising people through the government. All right, my next meme up. Of course, I always took Thomas Sowell a little bit further, but either way, I love this meme. This is one of the first ones I fact checked, by the way. When Jimmy Carter purchased the teachers union endorsement in 1979 by establishing the Department of Education, the USA was number one in education. This is, I'll get to that in a second. Worldwide, okay, let me read this again. When Jimmy Carter purchased the teachers union endorsement, I'm reading the meme, by the way, for those of you on the podcast. When Jimmy Carter purchased the teachers union's endorsement in 1979 by establishing the Department of Education, the USA was number one in education worldwide. 46 years and $4.1 trillion later, the USA is number 40 worldwide. We are, however, number one in cost per student. Any questions? This is partially true, but it's still somewhat of a, it's still very factual. So what I did was I researched it. So as of 2025, the USA ranks 34th, not 40th, in math, 16th in science, 7th in reading, according to the rankings among 81 countries globally. Additionally, the U.S. holds a 15th position in the education index ranking with a score of 0.909. Now, when America, when the United States, I lost my feed. There we go. Sorry about that. When the United States created the Department of Education in 1979, there weren't any rankings. So so the meme to say it was number one in education, there weren't any worldwide rankings. However, the educational system in the United States was so robust, and scores were so high, and grades were so good. That's how I'm summarizing what I've researched. The education system was in a much better condition than what it is today, $4.1 trillion later, as it likes to point out. And the next, so again, pointing out another problem with bureaucracy. This Department of Education bureaucratic agency has gotten so bloated. The reason why the Democrats love it so much is because it's a way to funnel money from the federal government to the local Department of Educations in the state and pierce the 10th Amendment veil, by the way, because what they can do is they can say, well, if you want this money, this from the Department of Education, you want this federal money for your state, all you got to do is teach this curriculum. And that is how they get things like DEI and all the different things that are more narrative based and more ideological based than truly based in education. And it's the reason why our education system has lost its quality, we'll say, worldwide. All right. The next meme up is a picture of Thomas Massey. What I said in November still holds true. Until men are being walked to jail, this is still a cover up. Of course, he's referring to the Epstein files. I brought this up not so much in support of Thomas Massey, but also to show how people turned against him. You've got a lot of people turning against him. Trump has turned against him. Like I told you, everybody's turning against each other. If you don't stick to the narrative of the group and you kind of venture out, you get turned on. It helps divide up the rest of the people who are left in the movement. Um, we know what's going on with the Epstein files. We know the corruption in DC. We see it. We see what's interesting is we've only seen part of the Epstein files, and we can see not only the heinous, horrible, illegal, unmoral, inhumane things that happen in there. They know the people that they haven't released the names. My point on this, and the reason I brought this meme up, they don't want to go after the perps. They don't want to go after the people that are guilty in there because they know when they do, they have to uncover a whole list of other people. They got to cover up, they have to uncover all the things they've been trying to hide. And when you see the connections of all these people to the brokerage houses and the investment companies and the banks and the big corporations, and you see how many of those people that run all of those large corporations and large investment firms, and you see them people are connected to the Epstein files or the corruption that's going on with politicians and how they're making their millions of dollars through the market, it would crash the system. It would crash the stock market. And you see, they don't want to do that. Not out of kindness for the little people. Of course not. They don't want to do that because it ruins their game, right? It ruins how they get their money. It ruins their bank accounts. But it, would take them out of power. Most of them would lose power. Most of them would lose office as a result of all this getting exposed. So they don't want to rock the boat because they know that they're the ones who lose. They're not propping it up for our benefit or our retirement funds. They're propping it up for themselves. So don't be surprised if you don't see one single arrest out of the Epstein files or any of the other corruption, like what's going on in Minnesota and Elon Omar and all of the Elon Omar, who has a winery, has made millions of dollars in a couple terms in office. It's disgusting. We know it's happening, but we get divided up. And as long as we're turning on each other, we're not paying attention. As long as we know our stock portfolios are just enough so we're going to retire okay, we look the other way. Okay, the corruption's okay. We kind of know it too. We kind of don't want to upset. It's almost like we want the perps and all the people to be arrested that are doing all the illegal activity, like in the Epstein files and the insider trading in Congress. We kind of want justice to be served, but then we kind of know in the back of our heads, golly, things might get really messy. So you get another layer of people that are willing to turn their heads because to keep things the way they are, where we get our vacations and we got our little salaries and we got our nice cars and our nice little houses, and we get to order things on Amazon and get it to our front door in one day, to kind of keep things as they are is kind of what makes people willing to turn the other way and turn on the people who are exposing things. As for Nick Fuentes, and I'm going to bring up a few other controversial people here in a minute too, whether people like him, don't like him, support him, don't support him, agree, not agree, whatever the case may be, controversial figures oftentimes bring out a lot of other things that are going on in our country. So you might not like that guy, but because you're watching the news story or because he might have said something or did something, it might bring out some other things that expose other stuff. Like my next meme. The next meme up, it says, Trump is a dictator. I got to make that meme a little bit bigger. I got to make my little picture a little small if you're watching me. I'm behind the My Pillow emblem, by the way. The next one shows a bunch of Democrats, popular Democrats in caricature form, standing behind a sign that says Trump is a dictator. says the party that wants you to decide if a baby should live or die, how much money you should earn, what energy source you should use, what words you can say, what they can do to your kids without your permission, how you must refer to what a person wants to identify as, and who can own a gun or not. These are all the narratives that people on the left and the Democrats have been able to use to not only corral more people into their corner, but make you feel like they have a right and true movement. So then anything that they can point out to make you turn against somebody else, they're going to do it. You know, I admit, Trump has said a couple things here and there that I might not like. Some other people don't like. Maybe he's done some things that, are against his campaign promises, or a few of the things that people have told me. Hey, Trump did this. I get it. I get it. However, when you look at the majority of the things that he is doing, those things get ignored. Even the good things get ignored because they highlight, underline, all caps, exclamation point, the things that they're able to point out that either he did wrong or said wrong, which then in turn, when you make the other person look worse than what you're doing, your ideas don't look so bad. So abortion doesn't look as bad because the other side, whoo, did you catch that misstep? Or when you talk about how much people should earn because the other guy's making so much money, you make the rich guy the evil guy. So, whoo, come on over here and we're going to make some policies to take their money away. We're going to put you on a government program that's going to make you feel rich because you don't have to work and you get some money. I know I exaggerated that. Either way, my friends, these are all the things they do to turn us against each other. You don't have to like everything somebody does to not turn on them. You just have to find other sources of information or find other things about that person to see if overall they're doing the right. And I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about everybody. Thomas Massey. People have turned on him for some things that he said that are against establishment. This is why we have to be a little bit more open-minded and not turn on each other in the meantime. My next meme says, I wasn't always so political, but then you came after my God, my children, my country, and my freedom. So here we are. This is why I told you in the previous meme, I've kind of put these together side by side for a reason. This is why we have to not only point out the freedoms that we're losing, but we have to be respectful of each other's freedoms so we don't willfully give up ours because we're made to feel guilty for not agreeing with theirs. Because when you step away from politics, politicians are able to steal things like your God, your children, through policies, by the way, that, schools schools don't have to tell parents what their children are doing or identifying as, or whatever the case may be, or my country. When we're not involved in politics, politicians are able to steal our country and our freedoms through not only legislation, but through the guilt they put on us for not agreeing with them and their beliefs. My next meme up, Chuck Schumer, 1996, he was against, 1996, voter ID is common sense. 2026, voter ID is Jim Crow 2.0. This is what they do. They adopt the meme when it's convenient. Think about who was in office at the time, but also think about the midterms. These guys are changing their opinions with the polls so they can be able to work ahead of the midterms and the next election. They don't care that they're changing their opinions or that they're lying about what they said or what they it's not that they're growing or that they are evolving in the way. No, it's that they are doing what's convenient for them and their party. And that's why we have to look at the hypocrisies and the lies to be able to fight our battles in ways that not only protects America's freedoms, but helps save other people. The next meme up says, it's just black and white, when it says, if you keep voting for people who think you're too dumb to get an ID, you're proving their point. I brought this one up for a reason, by the way. Not just, of course, I don't want to call people dumb who are voting for politicians who think that getting an ID to vote is a bad idea. I'm flipping it around. If you keep voting for people who think you're too dumb to get an ID, you're proving their point. But the point that I want to prove is that they have so meticulously been able to craft the narrative that getting an ID is racist or bigoted or whatever the case may be. Most of the people that support that it's racist to get an ID thing narrative, most of them have already used an ID to vote or to register to vote. So it's not that they're not able to separate themselves and go, wait a minute, I used an ID to vote. So yeah, wait, that's crazy that they shouldn't have to. They just have been I hate to use the word brainwashed because it makes it sound like I'm being I'm being too common, if you will. But the reality is they've been able to convince people that even though you've used an ID to vote, it's still racist to make others get an ID to vote. And they do that with narratives. They do that by making you turn on people. They do that through manipulating the facts. But as I said earlier in the show, if we simply got multiple sources of information, you not only look at the other side. I do it all the time. You not only see the hypocrisy, like what I found here in this meme, but you see the flip flop. You'll find your gut will just open up. Your mind will open up to the facts instead of repeating the narratives. And my friends on the right do it the same way. It's kind of why it's why I travel the direction that I travel. I've got my friends on the right that just repeat the narratives over and over and over again. And I want to tell them, look, guys, we're not winning battles. We're just kind of being an echo chamber within our own groups. And it's not solving the problems that we need to solve. All right. I need to move a little bit faster sometimes. And the next slide up. Illegals help Democrats win elections, but many people don't realize illegals counted in the census, also giving the Democrats extra House seats. So the entire Democratic Party structure depends on illegals and fraud. That is why they hate ICE so much. That is why they hate the SAVE Act so much, because an ID would keep them from not only voting and registering to vote, but IDs also they don't keep them from being counted in the census. But when they don't have an ID, if they're not citizens, or they are able or to be able to vote, then it kind of steps them one or two steps out from the circle where Democrats are able to include them in and use them for not only the census, but for the for voting purposes. Again, I'm bringing up I have another few memes that kind of reflect on this also. And I'm doing that intentionally because without illegal aliens being included in the census, the Democrats would lose House seats because most of this happens in Democrat-run cities and states, and that, my friends, helps you connect some more dots. All right, the next meme up says, it's a woman drinking a cup of tea. Democrats give driver's licenses to illegals who don't even speak English, but proclaim black people can't figure out how to get one, and they call you a racist. ... If you think that everybody should have to have an ID to vote. Amazing how that happens. And there's facts to this. Illegal aliens get driver's licenses all the time. I know people in the back, because they get an ID, they use it as an ID not to drive. True, they need an ID, but it's made to be very easy to get one for just an ID purpose. But it's also easy to get a driver's license with it because somebody who doesn't speak English can go down to the motor vehicles office here in Louisiana and they can get a quote English speaking person to take the test with them to translate for them so they can get driver's licenses to drive without having to even speak English, i.e., read English or read road signs in English. The next meme up is my Pillow meme. Yes, I know it's a shameless plug for MyPillow, mypillow.com. Use the promo code WWFA to get discounts. But what I also wanted to bring up about this with Mike Lindell is some people don't like him because, he kind of went off on a thing about voting machines, and a lot of people believe in voting machines, and the ones who don't were behind Mike Lindell. But I like to point out Mike Lindell as a controversial figure, the same way I did with Nick Fuentes, that even if you don't like what he was doing about the voting machines and you don't believe in what he was saying about the fraud in election machines, you can look at how he uncovered a lot of irregularities in our election process, in our election systems. And that motivated a lot of people to wake up and have their eyes on where the fraud is and being able to uncover more fraud and do things and getting involved in our election process, registration, or in this case, that we got the SAVE Act, get behind things like that. His actions caused a lot of eyes to open and a lot more people to be involved. If you go to his website, use that promo code WWFA for up to 80% off. My next meme, I'll make it a little bit bigger here. This is actually funny because I saw this, I kind of giggled. It says, this is how congressional Democrats voted against voter ID. They put their ID into their scanner at their seats. By the way, if you take a tour of the Capitol and you sit in the House of Representatives seats, you will see this machine that takes the votes, puts them on the screen, so they have to use an ID to vote. And on to the next meme. Wow, the immigration laws President Trump is enforcing were passed by Democrats. Imagine that. As I've said before on my show, guys, I try to fact check some of these memes. I mean, of course, some of these are just kind of thoughts, but many of these, when it puts out facts, I do pull up, I do research on them, like I did with the Department of Education one, where it said, America was number one and then fell to the lowest in the world. And I showed you where it actually was. The meme, the gist of the meme was accurate, but I like to get a little bit more information out there so we kind of always don't take things for granted. And it's my way of encouraging people to look up your facts. I do this all the time, even when I read the news stories. I'll double check things, I'll look things up. Either way. So the laws Democrats now oppose that were put in place by Democrats in the past. The immigration, get adjusted here. I'm going to make my little face even a little smaller, I think. Now I'm down below the Patriot Mobile emoji. The laws Democrats now oppose: Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA, the McCarran-Walter Act, 1952, Democrat House, Senate, and President. That's true. Actually, in that case, the House and the Senate passed it. Truman vetoed it, Democrat, by the way, vetoed it, and it went back to the House and the Senate, and they were able to work on it a little bit and override his veto and get it passed. Just to give you a little bit more information. Number two, the second immigration that act that the Democrats passed was Immigration and Nationality Act amendments. That was the Hart-Celler Act of 1965. Democrat House, Senate, and President. And I've got, let's see, I got a little bit more information for you on that one. Is the, here it is, the Hart-Celler Act. I did a little research on that one because I pulled up each one of these immigration acts to find out if there's anything fishy there. And the bill was introduced by a Democrat in the Senate, a Democrat, and while the law drew support from both Northern Democrats and some Republicans, it faced strong opposition from many Southern Democrats who largely opposed its removal of discriminatory quotas. So this particular law was passed by Congress and signed into law by Lyndon Baines Johnson. So it actually was indeed passed by completely by Democrats. The Immigration Reform Control Act, IRCA, 1986, Democrat House, and a Rhino-dominated Senate. Now, here's why I went back and researched this, because in 1986, why, that's Reagan. And they want to talk about rhinos. But, it disappeared a little bit. It was Reagan who signed that when the bill was introduced by Senator Alan Simpson, a Republican, and in the House of Representatives by Mazzoli, who's a Democrat of Kentucky. It was a result of a bipartisan cooperation with Simpson and Mazzoli. And then, of course, as we know, it was signed into law by Ronald Reagan. So when they brought that up, it was more of a bipartisan thing than just a Democrat thing, but it was able to be passed because of the Democrat support. So in essence, it's true that the Democrats got it. But number 5, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, 1996, Democrat House, Senate, and President. The IRAA or IRRA was passed by the United States Congress, which is controlled by the Republican Party in both the House of Representatives and in the Senate. But guess who is the president signed into law? Bill Clinton. So that, my friends, is kind of when I see some disparities and I start seeing the years. I went, wait a minute. They're saying the House, the Senate, and the president. Well, it was Republican House and Senate, but a Democrat president. And again, I just kind of wanted to point out, even though this in simplicity is mostly correct, that without Democrats passing this, these things would not have passed. And these are the same pieces of legislation that the Democrats are working against right now, even though their predecessors, their party passed it or was responsible for getting it passed. But I didn't want to not say, make it all Democrats when there was some Republican culpability in it also. Just things to, point out a little bit there. A Mexican cannot vote in Mexico without a valid ID. He must come to America to do that. Fact, in Mexico, you need an ID. You need, actually, it's 2 different IDs. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole. But to register to vote, you have to have a citizenship ID. And then to vote, you have to have, you also have to have an ID so it is accurate, but they actually have another step in the process that we don't have. The next meme up. The evidence is clear. Nick Shirley has exposed massive amounts of voter fraud spanning decades in California. Dogs, dead people, illegals, all counting in California. 108 people registered in one home. We have that same problem in Louisiana, where there is proved and showed large apartment complexes, or I'm sorry, not houses with just tons of people registered to a single house. But the large apartment complex they had large apartment complexes that were shuttered and weren't even and were condemned, and still had people registered to vote on those addresses in multiple different apartments. So these are all the disparities that are being that if you look at them, you can see the need for not only the SAVE Act and an ID to vote, but you can see the hypocrisies that are being used to guilt people into feeling that voter ID is racist instead of looking at the facts. And if we start to show more facts and bring people together on more of these truths that are out there on multiple platforms, you see the hypocrisies being perpetuated from one news source and you see the facts from another news source. So when you put them together, your eyes not only open up, but you become galvanized on spreading truth instead of the narratives, and instead of turning on each other, and instead spending your time to work on getting out what really promotes not only our freedoms and liberties, but protects them. All right, we got the next meme up. Barack Obama, picture of him. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office. It has become an extraordinary problem. And as president, I will make sure that we finally have the kind of border security that we need. Again, the reason for bringing this out is it shows you, because today Barack Obama is saying that the SAVE Act is racist. So the other day, in his term, he's talking about border security and what we need to do to protect America. And he's blaming George Bush for people coming over the borders. But it all depends on who's in office and when the next election is, and how successfully they have been able to fan the flames of the narratives to divide us. And then they watch the polls again, and then they change their beliefs to be able to convince you to vote a certain way. And then, of course, as I backpedaled a little bit here to the last meme, they happily use every tool they can to register people every way they can. When you don't have voter ID, they're able to do that and use all of these illegal registrations to win elections. What most Americans don't have any idea of, this is my next meme. It shows a mass group of people. Most Americans have no idea this happened under Biden. 6.7% of Nicaragua entered, 6.2% of Cuba entered, 5.5% of Honduras entered, all illegally, by the way. 4.2% of Haiti entered, 3.3% of Guatemala entered, and 3.2% of Venezuela entered. On to my next meme. I only have a couple more memes up here. Matt Walsh said, if I said that it was important to preserve the culture of let me start over. Matt Walsh said, if I said that it was important to preserve the culture of some primitive jungle tribe in the Amazon, everyone would nod in agreement. But if I say it's important to preserve the culture of a small town in rural America, I'll just say preserve the culture of people in America. I'm denounced as a bigot. For Americans, the only culture we're not supposed to preserve is our own, because we're made to feel guilty that if we want to preserve the things that make us feel American, like pizza and, Chinese food, right? No, I'm kidding. But those have become a part of our food, I get it, but I know it makes another point, I get it, but it doesn't, because there are things that every individual American believes in that makes them American, whether it's the military, whether it's our education system, whether it's the food we eat or the places that we go. But when we see other cultures coming in here, and doesn't mean that, oh, when the Spanish people come in, the Mexicans come in, we're all gonna have to speak Spanish. Well, it's kind of happening actually. Or we're all gonna be made to eat all Spanish food. Well, we already have a Mexican. Everybody already loves going to eat Mexican food. It's not the point. We just want to feel like our country is not being invaded illegally. When we Americans want to preserve a country that we grew up in, it's not always about other cultures immigrating to America illegally that makes people feel uncomfortable. They might not consciously think this, but in the back of their heads, they don't want to feel like one day we're going to be forced to live a culture like the immigration system has imported in mass quantities from some country. Take Minnesota, for instance. Many people don't want to feel like one day you're going to have to walk down the street in a burqa, or you're not going to be able to walk your dog because they're seen as unclean now in some parts of our country. In New York, you don't want to feel like you can't walk your dog. You don't want to feel like you have to when they're praying in the street. It's not necessarily the way American culture has been. I get it. We have the freedom of religion, and I believe that. But Americans in general, in their gut and the back of their minds, it's not that where they feel like they're going to be forced to live a certain way. It's that they feel like they're not going to be able to have the America that they grew up in because other cultures that came here illegally forced us to live a different way. And they're bringing their belief system, which put people in power in other countries, in their own country, which caused poverty and other things in their countries, which made them want to escape to America for the land of opportunity. Collectively speaking, I'm just kind of putting out lots of individual thoughts on what's in people's minds on why they're worried about illegal immigration. Because illegal immigration, they feel, their fear is not people coming here to assimilate, to become part of a melting pot of cultures. See what I did there? They're worried that done illegally and all at once, we're going to be forced to live the way they lived in the countries they escaped from. But we get called racist and bigots if we want to fight for legal immigration, legal voting with the SAVE Act, or anything that protects the America that we grew up in or know to be near and dear to our hearts. My next meme: Trump unveils a bold term limits plan, 6 years for the House, 12 years for the Senate, wiping out up to 73% of career politicians from land, draining the swamp. It makes it sound like he unveiled it now. I researched this. It's something that he believes in term limits, and he hasn't brought it up in a while. But recently, other members of the House and Senate have brought it up, and he does support it. And the next meme up shows the guy with a shaved head and a big orange coat on, showing ID to vote. It says leftist, showing ID to vote at the polls. They don't want to hear that. But then he's got a smile on his face in the next picture and says, showing a vaccine card to enter into a restaurant. It shows the hypocrisy that they will change the policies to not only fit the narratives, but fit what's going on at the time. And I do believe that this is one of my I got 2 memes left. The second to last meme is a quote by Mark Twain: "The poison was never forced. It was offered gently until you forgot it was poison at all." It's got a bunch of food on the table. Yeah, it does apply to food. Our food has become poison with all the different chemicals and preservatives and all the additives in there and all the processed food. But I took this another step and said, related the poison to the messaging that we're hearing. It used to be that, it was all gentle. Okay, yeah, I get it. I don't agree with that narrative. I don't agree with that news story, but it's okay. And we accept it. It's spoon fed to us until it all gets to a point where it's poisoning our minds. When it was fed to us little by little, we didn't realize how poisonous it was. Now, today, we're realizing how poisonous all of this messaging and narratives and ideological BS, how it's poisoned our minds. And the last meme of the show, and I'll scoot out here pretty quickly after that. If 20 people work in a bank and all are stealing money from the bank, and they all know each other are stealing and yet do not say anything, when a new bank president comes in to fix things, the 20 people in the bank will do anything they can to stop the new president from ending their racket. I give you Washington, D.C. None of these memes were mine. I took them off the internet. I took them off Facebook and Instagram and X and stuff like that. But this one makes a great example of what goes on in Washington, D.C. We get somebody in there who's going to try to fix it. And then everybody who's in on the fix, who's in on the problems, who's in on the generations of elected officials that have been doing the wrong thing and have been running the racket and have been doing things illegally and profiting off of it, creating a government that benefits off of corruption more than it benefits off the freedoms and liberties of our Constitution. All the people that are in on it are always going to turn against anybody who comes in and tries to fix the problem. I give you what's happening today. My friends, thank you so much for your time with my show. I thank you so much if you'd share my show with other people. Thank you again for your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day tomorrow. And today, whenever you listen to my podcast, please visit me on YouTube and Rumble and all podcast apps, depending on how you want to get my next show. Thank you so much.